My name is Gloria Hrabwe. I've been living here. It's going to be 22 years in September.
My name is Adele Daniluk, and I have lived here for 23 years.
My name is Elaine Gulletson. I'm 81 years old, and I moved to the Ilarion 4 years ago.
Julia, it's about 10 years since we came to Saskatoon.
My name is Ernie Stefanik, and my wife's name is Jan. We have 4 children, 2 boys, twin boys, and 2 girls. And we lived in Saskatoon here now for some 10 years, unreturned from other places. And we've been here at the Ilarion for about 4 years, and we're enjoying it. The Ukrainians sort of, when they moved from Ukraine to Canada, there was sort of 4 principles that sort of guided them. First was family. Family was most important. Then came the church, and then came the community, and then came the culture and tradition and so on. Those are the 4 basic things that guided them.
And you know, Grandma was very intelligent, and so was my dad. My grandma come from a well-to-do family. They had a lot of land and whatnot. They had heard from other people about Canada, you know, and they did migrate down to southern Ukraine. That would be about, is that the Crimea, I think, lower down there? Yeah, and they saw the posters where you can get free land, and that's what they wanted to do. You know, they wanted their own land, they wanted the freedom.
My mother was born in Ukraine, and she came to Canada when she was 7 years old with the family. There were 3 other brothers and her mom and dad. They all came in a boat which docked in Halifax, I believe. And from there they took a train. I think their first stop was in Yorkton. And then they were in Theodore and another small village there, Shiho, and that's where they settled. When my mother was on the ship, all the family got off and they forgot about her. So finally somebody realized she wasn't there. They went and got her.
There's a wave of Ukrainian people that came. And as a matter of fact, I guess because they were traveling on this cattle boat for 2 months on the river, I guess that's where the love between my mother and father bloomed, because they were young. They didn't know each other. Well, I don't know, but they got to know each other through this trip on the boat, and then when they all moved in the same area, that's when they got together and got married.
Like when they come to Canada, they had to have this $10 to pay for this homestead. Yes. And I mean, there was homesteads with 10 acres broke. But no, he wanted land with lots of bush, because they never had trees in the old country. They didn't have no firewood. They used to pick dried cow bungs and burn them. And after the years, all those years, he said, this bush cost me my health.
I grew up in the Smuts area. My dad and mom were farmers, and I myself had to quit grade 10 school to help my dad on the farm. First we did farming with horses, and then my dad got a tractor, and I did a lot of work on the tractor, you know, so yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Mostly Ukrainian in where I grew up. Where my mom grew up, in the Melville area, there was a mixture of people already. But in our area, they're pretty well either Ukrainian or Polish. There was those 2 nationalities.
And she was 3 years old when she came on the ship. And she had little red boots, and she could dance Ukrainian. And she kept all the people on the ship to entertain all the way from Europe to Canada. They just loved her dancing. Yeah, that was Dad's younger sister, just below, just past him.
I was one of the dirty 30 babies because I was born in the 30s. My parents, our parents came over from Ukraine when they were young. They married very young. They married, I think, Dad was 18 when they married, and raised 10 children.
They were hardworking. You know, you had to be hardworking on the farm. My mom had the big garden. My dad never helped. You know, that was my mom's job and my job and my sister's job. You know, we had a cellar, like a dirt cellar in the house. We'd bring those potatoes. We had enough potatoes till spring. Then we had too much, so we had to take them out of the cellar, give them to the pigs, and so make room for the new crop.
Well, Dad had 8 horses because, like, he'd work 4 the first shift and then 4 because they get tired. The field is big and they have to pull this plow, this disker, this seeder, you know, fill it with grain, and then you pull it up and down and seed the grain. And then we had, there was 8 or 9 cows we milked, and then there was calves, and then there was pigs. They had a pig pen, and they would raise so many pigs, and then when they get they had to be a certain size, weigh so much before you could sell them and get a good price for them. Otherwise, even if they were 2 pounds less than what they should be, you wouldn't get the full price.
You know, when you're on a farm in those days, most of the time they couldn't afford to do too much because there's cash flow was just grains, selling grain and cream, milking cows and selling. We had a creamery in our town, and they used to take the cream. They used to buy the cream from the farmers.
My dad worked in a store, and it was a butcher shop and grocery store, and I would go there after school, and I washed the meat trays, and I weighed things up, like sugar we had to weigh in paper bags, and then it was everything. Sugar was rationed, meat was rationed. For meat, we had little round tokens that for so many pounds, we took so many tokens. And for sugar, there were stamps, pink stamps. And for coffee, we had green stamps and so on. And so before we could order any more, we had to fill a sheet, but like glue the stamps onto a sheet before we could order any more. It was fun for a while, but then my dad started a restaurant, and at a young age I had to work in there, go to school, and then work whenever I can get off school.
It was really a 3-room house, you know. But the first room was it's like a summer house. We just used it in the summertime. We never used it in the wintertime. We closed that off, so we just had 2 rooms, you know. In both rooms we had a stove in one that we cooked, and in the other room we had a stove that just to heat the house, you know. So that was our living room and bedroom and everything, you know. We had in the other room we had 2 beds, one double bed and a single bed, and a table with chairs. That's where we had our Christmas suppers and that, you know. and the dresser and the whole thing, you know. And the first bed, first room also had a bed, plus a table and a stove that that Mom cooked on, you know. So
Well, during the school year, you got up, got ready, went to bring the cows home, and then go to school and come back and just daily living.
In the summer holidays, my sister and I were so close in age, and my dad had a terrible back, you know, and I think he chopped down a lot of trees and pulled out roots and whatnot, utterly damaged his back. And he would sit on the tractor, and this stone, what did they call that? Stone bolt, I think, for, you know, when you put stones on there and drag it to a stone hill or someplace on the land. He would sit there and he would point, there's a stone, and so that we would spend the whole day, you know, just picking up stones and putting them on the bolt, and then taking them off and whatnot. And
They lived in the next town called Shiho, and so there was a train that went up there every day. So my sister and I, we often took the train to see our grandparents there. One time they came to Theodore to visit us, and I had red nail polish on, and my grandmother, she just hated that. So I had to go, and I had a razor blade, and I was scraping it like mad before I went to greet them. Yeah.
Well, because I lived, like Mom and Dad, they talked Ukrainian, and if Mom's family came around, they talked Polish. So I understand Polish and Ukrainian real well. And just live this day-to-day life just like everybody else. Everybody was poor in those days. So we just lived sort of, like I say, a daily living. Got up, went to milk cows, went to school, come back, and a routine every day.
At that time, we had about maybe between 500 and 600 people, and we had a high school, and we got a hospital built. I forget the exact year, but it was a thriving little village. It was busy. Saturday, you couldn't find a place to park. It was a 4-room school, and then there was a sort of a cottage beside it for kindergarten and grade 1. And yeah, that was it. And they had, it was during the war when I was going to school. So we had teachers for a little while, then we'd have to get another one. And in 1 year, I think we had about 6 different teachers.
well, we lived just a mile and a half from school, so in the summertime we walked. In the wintertime, my dad gave us a sleigh, and we took the sleigh and a couple of horses, and we drove to school, you know. So, or else we had a neighbor that picked us up. Well, we had maybe about 30 people in there, but you know, people that in those days everybody that started school, they did not know the English language. You know, when we started school, we had no English. Everybody spoke Ukrainian at home.
I've really enjoyed school. It was like the first teacher we had, Mrs. Jolly. We had her like for 2 years or something, 3 years. And she was really good. She had 3 girls. Mrs. Jolly and her girls were the only ones that could speak English. The rest were Polish, Ukrainian, German, French. And there was Kosmachuks, They were sort of like you could understand them, but they weren't, more like Russian. I said, my name is Nadia. So the first teacher called me Nettie. The second one was Nellie. The third one was Nora. Then Myra Zoe Henderson come, and without asking her anything, she just called me Bertha.
There was 4 schools in the area, one in the east, one in the west, one in the south, one in the north. Each one 5 miles away. And my dad's mantra, if that's the right word, I'm not sure. It just sounded good to me.
It sounds good.
You gotta have an education to get out of poverty. And he drilled that into us, and he encouraged us, and it was just always, you gotta study, you gotta study, you gotta study. And he didn't want us walking 5 miles to school back and forth in the winter. I mean, the winters could be wicked, eh? And he had no boys, eh? He just didn't have no boys. Not that a woman couldn't drive a horse buggy either, but he went to town and he found out that there was a school there with 2 teachers. So he bought a 2-room house in Spalding, and so we moved to Spalding so we could go to school there, because he figured it'd be better, teaching with 2 teachers. But then Mom and Dad, the farm was there, and we're in the city, and if it's harvest time, seeding time, Mom had to go. She went out there to help Dad with, because I think maybe the house was still there. Probably, yeah, it was. The house was still there, so they lived there in the summertime. And us 3 girls. I had 2 sisters, one older than me, and by 18 months, and the other younger sister was 5 years younger. And we stayed alone in that little house that they bought in Spalding. And then about every 3 days, Mom or Dad would come to town, see if we're okay and whatnot, go back. And
Well, it was usually ball games, picnics. In the summertime, there's a picnic in every school area. Well, they had sports, they had races, but it's mostly races. That's what took place, and every grade had a group.
My mom had a Chinese friend in Foam Lake, about 50 miles away from Theodore. And she loaned us a jukebox. So, and in our restaurant, we had a horseshoe counter that seated 20, I think. It was a big one. And then we had 8 booths. So there was could seat a lot of people at one time. So after a dance, a bunch of us, young people, we'd come to our restaurant. We'd put all the stools, they were removable, we'd put them on top of the horseshoe counter. And I knew how to play the jukebox without putting money in there. So we'd dance away round and round the counter. But that was our fun.
I was 14 years old when I worked, and I made enough money, $1.25, and I made Mom a dress for Mother's Day because she never knew when her birthday was. And I made her this dress. I took one of her dresses, and when she was outside working in the garden, I'd go in their room. She had that treadle sewing machine, the old-fashioned kind.
Absolutely.
And I made her this dress for Mother's Day. And she was so happy that, that she got a gift.
It was called St. Jude School, sort of between Dormy and Walker. It was a rural school, yeah.
So did you have more than one grade in your?
Oh yeah, grade 1 to 10.
Oh.
Grade 1 to 10.
How was that?
Oh, that was fun.
Oh.
And we had a great big belly stove at the back of the schoolyard, and that was it. And now talk about that. Uh, I remember one time there was a big storm on Thursday. I'll remember that. So I let the kids go home because parents came with sleighs or whatever it is, but took the kids home because there's a storm coming. And there was a storm there. On Monday, parents came with sleighs and so on. The first thing we had to do is dig out the outhouses because they were all covered with snow. They're snowbanks. So they had to dig out so kids could go to the outhouses when they needed to go.
Well, we lived in the farm. We had. Now farmers don't have everything. You know, we had cattle, we had pigs, we had chickens, turkeys. You know, and in the morning, well, you make sure everybody got fed. The cows had to be milked. We did that. You know, and then after that, you know, we just go out in the farm. If it wasn't raining, it'd be good. You know, so yeah. But it was fun, you know. It was hard, but it was fun, you know. So
Dad would go to town and get people used to have sales, kinda, you know, like whatever, and they'd have jars by the box full, all different. And Dad would bring them for 25 cents or something, but then $25 worth more than that 25 then. But anyway, he'd bring them home, and Mom would have them to Cannon. And then, like in the summertime, there was no fridges or anything, but then Dad built an ice house, so they didn't have to put the can of cream down the well. They could put it in the ice house, and all winter they pour water in there to freeze about like that. And then when they sawed wood in the spring, or it was sometimes whenever, anyway, they would take that sawdust and put it on top of this ice so it doesn't melt.
Like my grandma had the most wonderful stevie growing in her yard. Well, then Grandpa, when he'd call out in the middle of the day, "Oksana, make me some stevie soup." And so Grandma would just drop everything she's doing, and she'd be getting the potatoes and the dill and the onion, and my sister and I were going to grab these stevie. We'd lap them over. They were so big, the leaves. We'd put them over our arm. We'd go into the kitchen, and Grandma would peel the potatoes and get that stuff ready, and we washed the stevie and chopped it up, and in no time the stevie soup was ready, and there we were all eating stevie.
in the fall time, we grew cabbage. We made sauerkraut. We had a big barrel of sauerkraut, so we made they called it kapusniak. You put your ribs in there, and cook your ribs or your pork hocks, and you can have that. You have borscht. You have we had a lot of fried meat, roasted meat also. You know, we had borscht. You know, so, and then there was times that in the springtime there was mushrooms we'd pick. We'd have those. You know, mushroom with farm cream. That was good. You know, so yeah, and pierogies too. You know, that's the main thing, yeah.
Well, I still make it, and my grandchildren love it as well. So when I'm there, I'll have to make it, and my grandson, he's got the recipe. And when I was there at Christmas time, they all gathered around while I was making it. So he's making this, and it's called, in Ukrainian, it's called nachinka, and it's a cornmeal. It's almost like a cornmeal souffle. It's made with a cornmeal and milk. You have to boil the milk and then cool it. And eggs and butter, a little bit of onion. And then you put it in a casserole, and then you scoop it out with a spoon. And everybody seems to love that.
That
So I make it, special occasions or anytime somebody asks me to make it. Yeah. There's a trick to making it. It's a lot of stirring so that it doesn't get lumpy like cornmeal, and if it's overcooked, it starts to get lumpy, and then that's no good. It's got to be really smooth. So there's a lot of beating with a whisk or egg beater. But that was my favorite dish. And actually, my dad taught me how to make it. I started out making Johnny cake, which was quite a bit different, but anyway, it was the cornmeal and milk. And then he started with this other dish that I make. And he learned to cook. He used to help his mom because she cooked at big weddings. They were 3-day weddings at that time. And his mother cooked at that. And he would go and help her. So he learned all the tricks and trades. And then he taught them to me. And yeah, a lot of people, even a lot of Ukrainian people didn't make it for some reason. It comes from the region of Bukovina.
Okay.
Bukovina is a Bukovinian dish. So everybody likes it, but not too many people make it.
I loved what Mom used to make, and I know many Ukrainian ladies do, is what I call hitchis. And that's pork left over and pork hocks and whatnot, and it's made into sort of a jelly type of thing with jelly. And with some garlic and everything else. It's beautiful.
They were good memories, you know. We always had that was many years ago. We always had food, you know, because we had chickens that we killed, you know. We had a pig for the winter time and all that, so we always had food to eat, you know. So yeah, we were never hungry. That's the one thing, you know. So
And of course, like whether it's at Christmas or I say even at funerals, bread is very significant to the Ukrainian people. At Christmas, it's a special braided bread, and it has very significant meanings. And then at Easter, it's a little different kind, but it's still bread. And if you have ever noticed, at least in Ukrainian, the Orthodox Church anyhow, when there's a funeral or a memorial service, there's always bread by the altar.
He built a cow barn, a horse barn, a great big grain granary, a pig barn, a chicken coop, ice house, and Kumara. It's a little building shed, yeah, for Mom to store her stuff, like that she didn't have room in the house then. And that was where her 50-gallon wooden barrel was with her sauerkraut. And then when they would butcher in the winter time, they'd hang the meat up and just like cut whatever, how much and what they wanted it during the winter. In the summertime, she canned everything in jars, in 2-quart jars, because there were 6 of us. She would cut up the meat and she'd fry up garlic and onions and salt and pepper. Oh, you should taste that. I could still taste it. It was so good.
As I said, church was very important. So as a result, the 2 main things were Easter and Christmas. Yeah, when Mom made the Christmas supper, she also made little crosses out of the dough. Then the family, the dad with all the boys, went around with the holy water to all the granaries and so on, and Dad blessed the granary, and the boys put crosses on the doors and so on. That was a tradition. Then we went to the barns and fed all the animals with bread. And then we'd come back, we'd circle the house, bless the house, then we'd walk into the house.
And us kids used to go outside and wait, look for that first star to come out before we could eat, have supper. And everything was meatless. And but at 12 traditional dishes, meatless. And you know, Mom was a wonder of all the things she used to prepare, and it's so good. And then when we went, and Dad would have a bowl of holy water, and then he'd make a little brush out of hay, and he'd go around. I remember I was always carrying this bowl of water, and Harry, what was it he had to carry? And Dad would have this little brush he made out of hay, and he would bless all the buildings, the cattle, and the house, and us. And we'd stand outside. As soon as we saw that star, we went in to eat.
And that was Christmas. At Epiphany later, we sort of followed the same thing, but there's always hay we had on the table. So when the holiday was over, Dad would take the hay at the entrance to the farm, and he'd burn it, and we as kids would jump over it, one thing or another, but he would make the cross with the ashes. And that was supposed to keep the evil spirits away. So there's a lot of these traditions that I still remember them, and they're meaningful.
Well, Easter, you know, go to church, have blessing of the baskets and all that, you know, so. And the Christmas, you know, the carolers used to come to the house, you know, so.
Easter was very special, and so was Christmas. So we had a lot of traditional dishes that my mom taught me, and I would help her. And I can't think of all the dishes that we had, but one was boiled wheat. That was very important. Now I can't tell you the meaning of it because I forget. And Easter, of course, was even more special. And I had two uncles that were priests of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And one was my dad's brother and one was my mom's brother. And my mom's brother got to be a bishop, and after that he was elevated to a metropolitan, which is the highest that you get in the priesthood in our church. So he started out being a school teacher, and then he went into the priesthood. So a lot of my sister and I went to his place for holidays, and he had 3 boys, 3 sons, and we got along always. So that was a good place to go for a holiday.
Christmas again was there because there was caroling. Now they carol inside and so on. When we lived out on the farm, we went caroling from farm to farm with sleighs, with horses. And we went to there. That was fun. And we visited all the neighbors in the community. And of course, there was a little bit of debauche, you know, and so on. So that was great. That was great. Then it ended up with a New Year's dance on the 14th. That all the Christmas was over and the caroling and so on, and that was a whoop-de dance celebration there at the New Year's dance.
Really, they were all good holidays, you know, the holidays, especially Christmas time. We had, my dad would bring hay and put them on the floor, and my mom, they put, scatter the nuts in there, and we had to kind of look for that, you know, so, yeah. Now they don't have those, they don't do that anymore, you know, so.
Well, we lived quite a ways away from the church we went to. So in the summer, we pretty well went every Sunday. But in the winter, it was a hit and run thing.
Well, one thing Mom made us always do, we have to kneel below before the kitchen table on our knees and say the Lord's Prayer. That was because there's no Orthodox church nearby, and so we went to the United Church because we were living in Spalding, you know, going to school there. That's what we did. But still, I think for a long time we did say the Lord's Prayer, and I think we said it in Ukrainian.
When I was growing up, they didn't have a Ukrainian Orthodox church in our village. And it wasn't until 1949 or 48 that they bought an Anglican church that was no longer used and fixed it up and brought things in from the Orthodox church. And my husband Michael and I were the first ones that were married in that church.
Oh yes, the typical Ukrainian weddings. At that time, you know, now we have technology, we have mail and all this type of thing. Out in the country, the bride and the parents to the neighbors and so on, and made a personal invitation to the wedding. There was no mail and invitations and so on. They built a platform on the yard, and that was the dancing thing. The community all gathered, and cooks were helping cook and everything else. And you've probably heard it was referred to a sort of a 3-day wedding. First one was preparation, next one was celebration, the third was cleanup. But everyone was community-based, and everybody pitched in. So that was great. That was great, yeah.
He used to come to the restaurant, but I didn't think much of that. I mean, he was another customer. But then, at the dances, I noticed he was dancing more and more. He'd come and ask me to dance with him, so I did. And then there was a lot of weddings that in 1949, and his sister was getting married, so I was invited to his sister and one of his brothers. And then his cousin was getting married in September of 49, and we went to that wedding, had fun, and then that's when we started going out together. And every Sunday he came over to our place, and I made the meal, and then we'd go for a drive, and that's how it all started. And 6 months after going together, he gave me a ring and proposed at that time. And in another 6 months, we had a wedding. So that was our courtship. I didn't want to go and live on the farm. He already had a married brother living in the same yard and so on. And he had some bachelor brothers. They never married to this day. And so they had a house full. So my answer was, when he proposed, I'll marry you on one condition. And he says, what's that? I says that we don't go to live on the farm. And he agreed. So we lived right in the restaurant. We had a room to ourselves. And then my dad was actually a carpenter. So he took Michael and they built several houses in Theodore. And so we made a little bit of money, and he was a very good man, I must say. We never fought or anything. That's why we were married for 68 years.
We went back to Westasta, that's what it was, to the school. And I was dancing. Will came and asked me to dance and he wanted to take me home. And I said yes, and then I thought, well, gee whiz, I don't even know this guy. So then I told him my mom and dad want me to go home with them. So I got out of that. But then I went home, and all of the next week I couldn't stop thinking about him and how much I really wanted to go with him. So I asked my Uncle Mike, that's Grandma and Grandpa's, one of their twins. I asked him to drive me to Spalding to the dance, but I might not come home with him.
You had a plan.
I had a plan. So I'm standing there in the hall, and I looked towards the entrance because the men usually stood in a bunch, you know, in front of the entrance door, and the girls were further back. And I looked, and there he was. And he came towards me, and he asked me again, "Can he take me home?" And I said yes, and that was it. Yeah.
I got married in 1953. My husband and I, we were married for 50 years and 3 months. There was an organization my husband belonged to, and I joined also, you know, and from the church also, you know, we were involved in the church. You know, when my husband retired over at the cathedral, you know, so we used to go volunteer. There's two of us used to go, not only one. So, you know, he was handy at everything, you know. He'd do everything, whatever had to be done, you know.
We met here in Prince Albert. In Saskatoon. She came from Kenora, but she was working here for an optometrist here in Dr. Hayden in Saskatoon. And we met at a youth dance. I was president of the youth organization here. And so I was a little busy, and Jan and her sister Vicky were at the dance. And I told her that wanted to take her home, but I was tied up with some loose ends. By the time I finished that, she was gone. She left me. so that was our first little argument. I said, "How come you left me?" Well, she says, "You were too busy. I wasn't going to wait around." So that was it. But anyhow, fortunately, we ended up got married.
That one year we got married, the oldest son, he got married in February. The next, Grandma Gry was like my husband's brothers. The next one got married June the 10th. We got married in July the 17th. So there were 3 Grivas got married from February to July. Him and his brother went together and bought a farm. So he bought a little house and moved it. But it was too late in the season to fix it up. But his mother was going to Manitoba to visit her mom, Grandma Moskal. She wasn't feeling good, so she stayed there the winter to look after her, and we moved in there. Charlie and Esther, the oldest couple, and baby lived there, and Stan and Helen, the next oldest son, they were there for a while until they had a little house just across the street, and till they fixed the house up so they could live in there, so they moved there. So it was kind of a family gathering all the time. We used to have so much fun.
As I said, my parents came from very humble beginnings, but they did all right. They raised the children, and everything went well. Live your life to the fullest, from day to day. Leave the past behind, because you can't do anything that's gone beyond. But you can live today and plan for the future. And hope and faith will carry you through, whatever the end may meet. But don't dwell on the negative. Go on the positive. And be forgiving, because carrying a burden or some resentment is not going to do you any good. So be charitable, be forgiving, and look with the positive, and look with hope and faith.
That is
So
beautiful. Yeah.
that's about it.